Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Ben and Jay Show. I'm Ben Hartranft and my co-host Jamiel Owens here. What's up, everybody? I hope everybody's having a great day. I feel like I'm in Philadelphia right now with the Eye of the Tiger.
Let's turn it up a little bit more. Let's get that feeling in here.
Man, it feels great.
All right, we're gonna let it play until he actually speaks. This is my favorite part when he comes on because he's just so cool with it. That's my part. I love that part. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ben and Jay Show after the Memorial Day weekend, and it is still great because regardless of the circumstance,
I screwed everybody out there
and had fun. Before anything, we just want to thank you guys for joining us. Just want to let you guys know that this webinar is made possible by Access Services. Access Services is a nonprofit serving 11 counties in Eastern Pennsylvania with the mission to create better ways to serve people with special needs. They've been doing it for 44 years, and they're only expanding their services as they bend to fit the needs of those in Eastern Pennsylvania. Hey, Ben, it's that raffle. We always do it every single show. Tell them what we got going
today,
on.
We want to thank our friends from Tony Roni's Pizza, and I know my mom's watching out here. So look, you might win a prize of a Tony Roni's gift certificate, everybody.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
That's what's up. Hey, so stick around. We're going to be raffling that off, so stick around at the end of the show. How are you entered into this raffle? Simple. By you actually registering for this webinar, your email address is automatically entered. Our assistant, thank you, Kaylee, once again. She has all the information. And when we go at the end of the show, Ben and Kaylee will pick a winner of that prize, and we will award you with information on how to claim that prize. We will gather information on where to mail that at. So, Ben, as we always do, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit so the audience, those who are new, can get to know who Ben is of the Ben and Jay Show.
So I'm Ben. They call me the Brains. So I am on the autism spectrum. I met Jamiel 2 years ago, 2019 in August, and I was on his show called The Ausome Show. So I was diagnosed when I was 3, and I couldn't even talk, and now today I just talk, and there's no off button on me. And then I wanted to do some stuff, so I really wanted to win Homecoming King, and I won Homecoming King. I was on Ellen, and I actually carried the Super Bowl trophy for the Philadelphia Eagles when they won. And then when we got in this quarantine, I was walking home one day doing my exercise, and I said, I want to start a webinar show. And I called Jamiel, and Jamiel was like, all right, let's do it. So this is our 7th week doing this. It's kind of like John Krasinski, but I was making that joke in the beginning with the paper because I was trying to be like John Krasinski in the beginning.
Yo, listen, Ben is the man. If you don't know Ben, he is nicknamed the Mayor for a reason. He knows everybody. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. Ben just celebrated a 22nd-year-old birthday.
22nd birthday last week. That was so much fun. Thank you for coming by my house. That was fun.
Yeah, Ben, it was dope, man. Definitely a blessing to have you in my life, call you family and my brother. Let me just get a little brief introduction because my man Tom, who is the real deal here, needs all of the show. But my name is Jay, one half of this conglomerate we call Ben and Jay. A lot of you guys know me from my works as doing from the Ausome Show, whereas though I was the host, curator, creator, whatever you want to call it. It's an inspiration from my son Shane, who is on the spectrum. He is 12 years old. And basically, my mission and my goal, which it still is to reach out to fathers, especially those men who have a hard time dealing with their emotions, with the diagnosis of their children. I had a hard time when actually finding out that Shane was diagnosed with autism. I didn't have a lot of people to actually go to, and the resources was limited. So when I was actually to get on the ball with my feelings and actually just cultivating the strengths, which Shane has many, and autism is not a decline of any of them, but only it just insinuates them even more. I'm just making it my mission to speak out to men and women also, but to give a little bit of light in this dark and cold world or the society, whatever you want to call it. So me and Ben, he was on the show with his father Glenn. We remained friends for so many years, and he did give me that call. He called me up on a bat phone, and I answered, and I was like, "Hello," and he was like, "Yo, let's do this show," and I said, "Word," and here we go, right here today, the Ben and Jay show. So definitely is a match made in heaven. Cagney and Lacey, Yang and Yang, whatever you want to call us, Cheech and Chong. Not all the Cheech and Chong, but just the figures, Cheech and Chong. That's who we are. But today, our guest today is an extraordinary man. We have two clips from YouTube that you can actually look up, and we want to share this with you. We really do think that actually seeing this man at work, which will be Time Island, and hearing his passions through visual and his voice will actually speak volumes about who he is and what he does for the community. So with our lovely assistant Kaylee, we're going to go ahead and we're going to play those clips. Everybody, pay attention. Tom speaking.
Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. These are my secrets to success.
Please welcome Thomas Iland.
Autism. What comes to your mind when you hear that word? But my mother didn't tell me about my diagnosis. At first, she sits me down at the kitchen table with my dad and proceeds to tell me that I have a condition called autism. I don't want to have autism. I want to be like everybody else. I thought life as I knew it was over. My parents assured me that my diagnosis is not my definition. My life is not a label. So what kind of labels are you putting on yourself?
Thomas Iland was diagnosed with autism at 13 years old. Since accepting his diagnosis, Thomas has been recognized as an author, speaker, and emerging leader in the autism community. Thomas recently left his career as a certified public accountant to educate and motivate people with autism and other learning differences. He is the author of the award-winning bestseller, Come to Life, Your Guide to Self-Discovery. He continues to speak at events and conferences nationwide to inspire others through his mantra, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. On April 2nd, 2019, Thomas had the honor of speaking at the United Nations World Autism Awareness Day to share his knowledge and firsthand experience about assistive technology and successful law enforcement interactions for people on the autism spectrum. He also spoke on the TEDx stage with his message, How to Come to Life, to impart wisdom and inspire others. The title of his speech today, Competently Communicating Autism. Please help me welcome Thomas Iland.
Thank you very much. Imagine you're sitting by a phone, waiting for it to ring for hours on end, and it never does. How are you feeling right now? Imagine having that feeling for the first 13 years of your life. My younger sister and brother were receiving calls left and right from friends looking to hang out. Me? Nothing. I was desperate to find out why that phone wasn't ringing. So I went to my mother and asked her, Mom, why doesn't the phone ever ring for me? And she told me something that would change my life forever. Let me take you on a journey of competently communicating autism.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
That
Wow.
yeah.
That's pretty dope.
Let's do a round of applause. Listen, for those of you who have never heard of Toastmasters, including myself, I had to research this.
Oh,
As simple as I can make it, it's an international organization that helps push your boundaries in public speaking, leadership skill development, impromptu speaking, networking, and confidence, and probably Thomas a whole lot more that I didn't mention here. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I like to always leave off with the man, the myth, the legend, Thomas Iland. Thomas, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben and Jay. It's really nice
No
to
problem.
be here.
Absolutely.
First off, I just want to know, because each one of those clips, you're just too smooth on the stage. What's going on, man? Like, tell me how I can walk on the stage and command that presence, because you was just up there like, yeah, I'm about to break it down to you guys. Y'all gonna remember me. So you know, your smoothness, you definitely got some swag with you. I definitely appreciate that. I can know that. So Ben, let's get these questions started off, bro.
Absolutely,
You got it.
my man. Here we go. So Thomas, thank you for being on. Thank you for joining us here on today. Tell us, tell our audience a little bit about being diagnosed at 13. How did the decision to have you diagnosed come about? Like, I like the part when you're about the phone in the beginning and then about the Pong. I thought that was pretty good.
Certainly. So what you saw in that video there was about 13 years in, but actually around the time I was 4 years old, or maybe a little bit before then, was the first time, or when it was first suggested that I might be on the autism spectrum, because I was born in Illinois, and my aunt, that's my mother's sister, was this autism specialist for the state of Illinois. And my aunt suspected that I might be on the autism spectrum, but my mother wasn't having any part of it. I was her firstborn, and my mother didn't want any indication at all that I may not be perfect, or she might be a bad mother or something. Well, my aunt had other plans and took me for an informal screening without my mother's knowledge, and proceeded to play some games with me. And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of fun. It's like I'm having a play date with my aunt. But little did I know that I was being screened for autism. And back in 1987, 1988, the diagnostic criteria at the time said you had to have an intellectual disability or mental retardation, to be less politically correct, in order to be diagnosed with autism. And since I don't have an intellectual disability, I was not diagnosed with autism back then. But if you fast forward to about 1995, 1996, the diagnostic criteria changed. And you didn't have to have an intellectual disability to fit the social, behavior, communication difficulties that make up an autism diagnosis. So that's when I officially fit the criteria. But my mother continued to be in denial about it a little bit, and she eventually did find out about the informal screening, and she went ballistic.
That's what I was about to ask you.
Yeah.
So before I could accept my own diagnosis and learn about what it was, I had to know that my mother and my father and my family accepted my diagnosis first. I could not accept my diagnosis until I knew my mother, my father, and my siblings did.
Definitely a good point. The first point is definitely, I was going to ask you, what rage came over your mom when she found out? Because I can only speak from the outside in, but a bond of a mother and her child, regardless, is uncanny. It's something that you can't even describe. And for someone to go behind their back to basically do something that they're not in line with at that current time is literally raising hell. You literally are asking for every bit of every wrath that it could possibly be given. And wow, it was a bold move, but I can understand the concern and the love when it came down to actually making that move. And then also a very key point, and I do believe this is where I struggled at before, and sometimes I'm struggling now. Better though is the fact that you said mother and father had to understand your diagnosis first. It's very key. I knew when my son was first diagnosed, it was easy to blame, to point the finger at his mom and say, "Oh, this is your fault. It must have came from your side of the family." And vice versa too, also from there. So was there any blaming that was going on between your mother or your father?
While I don't know their exact stories or if there was finger pointing, what we did come to discover, particularly as they accepted my diagnosis and went on to tell me about it, was that we had to be united as a family unit. And my parents also made a point of it to tell me that what's happening to you or what's happened to you is not your fault. So please do not blame yourself, because I think in society today, a lot of people with autism are blaming themselves for what has happened or how people have treated them. And I even heard a blog recently about how people with autism grow up, become adults, and look back on their life and think that they were bad people.
Wow, really?
That's not the case at all.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's it. Ben, how do you, I know this is kind of off the record of our questions, but how do you feel about that, what Tom just actually said? Do you really feel like this was your fault? Like thinking it back at your childhood and where you're at now, how much you accomplished, how much you have grown as an individual. I mean, you do what we say, quote unquote, normal is. Do you feel as though that you blame yourself, Ben?
Well, that's a great question, Jamiel. First of all, when my parents first found out about the diagnosis, I really don't know if they really got like a reaction out of that. They told me that they were like, what's going to happen to my son? Like, what's going to happen to my future of my son? And I just want to give a quick shout out to my mom and dad, because one, they are amazing, and two, they really keep me successful and they keep me pushing on who I need to be today. And it's just really, really incredible.
Yep, definitely shout out to Sandy and Glenn. Definitely shout out to them because they definitely do. But that's a very good question, Tom. I'm actually happy that you mentioned that because it gets your gears rolling on. Like, you know, are you blaming yourself? And that's probably something we could discuss later. Let me go into the next question. And it deals with it a little bit about your childhood. How was your childhood growing up? Was there anything early in your life you struggled identifying with early before your diagnosis?
Well, thinking back to when I was youngest, there was a time where I stopped talking for about 6 months. I didn't speak to anybody. I was having my own fun, kind of in my own world, but I started speaking again. And by then I could read, I could write, I could spell. I just took in information like a sponge and was finally ready to wring it out.
Really?
And I could program VCRs and other recording devices to record Sesame Street and other shows. I'd rewind my favorite parts over and over again and find them just as funny. And I even said lines from movies and TV in conversation. We call it video talk in my family. When I say something I heard in a movie or a TV show, even if it didn't apply to the conversation or the topic at hand. And as I grew up, I started to have more of my own thoughts and speak my own words and think less of the movies and the TV shows that I'd seen. But it still is a little bit there to this day. And I found that by really speaking from my own heart and my own mind, more so than thinking about the stories of the fictional situations of others, that's where I start to be more authentic and more natural and more real.
Can I piggyback what Tom said real quick about the videos and stuff?
Go ahead.
I used to love VHS tapes growing up. One of my favorite movies was 1776, and I would know the whole play and the whole time, I would watch it every year on 4th of July. I would rewind it and just play the scenes over and over again, like you would say. And speaking of Sesame Street, I don't know if you know about the autistic character Julia.
I do know about Julia.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, like how Julia can make an impact with people today on the autism spectrum.
Definitely. I mean, just coming from my perspective, which is the outside looking in, my son Shane, he sometimes go into, well, now, since he's a very big fan of trains, he goes into dialogue, the exact same dialogue that is actually mentioned on YouTube about some of the train excursions. Our favorite right now is the 4501 and the 611. That's our favorite train, mine's and his. But he will actually recite the same exact words that the narrator is saying on that video. And he'll just do it like he's doing his own YouTube commercial. Now, before, that used to bother me. As a father, I don't want him being out in public where there's people and he chooses to talk to himself. I want him to be able to talk to people. So I always found myself correcting him, like, hey, what are you talking about? Talk to daddy. I want to know. And he'll stay quiet. Now what I'm learning to do is allowing him to actually speak. And what he does is say, hey, daddy, did you know that at the end? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of it quietly. Can you speak up and let me know again? And he'll go into the same thing over and over again. So it's amazing when you said movie talk, how I automatically associated with my son, and his movie talk happens to be trains right now. I'm sure it'll be something greater. Well, it may not. He loves trains, but it may be something else in the future. But that's awesome. That is awesome. 6 months without talking.
Wow.
Months. Like, could you imagine? Not saying that you couldn't talk, but not talking for 6 months. How much of your life will actually change? That's
And then again, I was too young to actually recall that happening. And I think a lot of the stories that have been about my childhood or about my early youth came from my parents and their own experiences and their own memories or what have you. And so, and today I couldn't picture or feel what it's like to go talking or not talking rather for 6 months outside, maybe texting or using word pads or digital ways of typing what I want to say.
exactly.
But there are so many people out there with autism that haven't spoken a word. And as long as we're talking about parents' perspective, I saw online the other day and I hear the stories of some parents who have never heard their child say, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Never
know,
heard that, or at least
I
not the way
actually,
they initially wanted it.
Exactly.
I
Go
was
ahead,
going
Ben.
to tell a quick story, and then we can get back to the interview. So you know Jeffrey Lurie of the Philadelphia Eagles, his brother has autism,
Mm-hmm.
and
Really?
they have this passion that they want to do stuff more on the autism spectrum. One day, I read this in an article that his brother typed up to his mom, "Dad, Mom, I love you."
Oh, wow.
So I
Wow.
just think that's really cool to see how people could be connected in many different ways.
That is. It definitely is. Go ahead, Ben. You got the third question. You might as well go right
Absolutely.
to
All right.
I mean, honestly, this is a great interview. This is dope.
that one.
All right, Thomas, we are both on the autism spectrum, and even though we are both on the spectrum, we have different and likeness. How do you decide on differences to some not on the spectrum or have never contacted with someone that is on the spectrum?
So let me start by saying, and Jay, you were talking about how impressed you were with me on that video, like commanding the stage and such. I was not always like that. And I want to be clear to you and your viewers that I am not the full face of what autism is. I'm just one person, and I can only tell my story and share my own experiences. But how somebody has autism, how they live with it every day is different for every single person. So on that note, when I was growing up, or we're still in my childhood, so to speak, I didn't pick up on the social cues of my peers, or I didn't read the room or look at their body language to determine whether or not they were interested in what I had to say. And that is very common in people with autism. They aren't reading the room or sensing what others want to talk about or taking a genuine interest in what others want to say or talk about. At first, it can be taught, they can learn about it, but it's not something that comes naturally to them. In fact, our brains, people with autism have a condition, if you will, called face blindness, where we cannot read facial expressions, or we have to be taught like what a smile or a happy face might look like, or what anger might appear like. So it doesn't come naturally to us. We have to be explicitly and directly taught about it. But once we are taught the rules or what to look for, it can start to make more sense, or we can start to connect the dots. In fact, I went to a school here in Sherman Oaks, California. I'm in just outside of Los Angeles for your viewers. I went to a school called the HELP Group, HELP, and they specialize in social skills for students with autism. So that was where I finally learned about facial expressions, about body language, about idioms, euphemisms, sarcasm, cliche, all those abstract concepts that my peers were picking up through experience that I had no idea about until it was brought to my attention. So those social communication cues and signs are often difficult for people with autism.
And Tom, I just want to bring it up. That reminds me of a school I went to. I went to a private school called the Talk Institute out in Philadelphia. And basically, this school, the one school district I went to, they gave up on me on reading and writing because they said, you're never going to read, you're never going to write. And basically, I went to this school and I went from a kindergarten to a second grade reader at 2 years at that school because they gave me a lot of social skills. They gave me a lot of perspective, a lot of different stuff, how to help me be successful.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you eventually got the help you needed, and shame on them for underestimating your potential and overlooking the possibilities with you. That happens more often
And
than
Tom,
not.
if I never know how to read, I would never drive. Like, God is incredible. God is like dope. He's amazing. And it's just,
There you go.
Yeah, that's on your hat there. God is dope.
There you go. There you go. Shout out to God. God is dope. It's interesting, you guys. I'm hearing you guys speak about this. There was a school that Shane, and I remember this, me and his mother had a hard time trying to find a school to put him in for pre-K. So we did try Elwyn. That was a disaster. Nothing against Elwyn if anybody is out there using it, but it wasn't for us. What we did find was a quaint school in Philadelphia, and I can't remember the name. I apologize because Bob is the owner of this school and he is awesome. Him and his girls, and these are teenage girls who have never been around anybody that was on the spectrum, took so I can't, is astronomical the care that they took with my son. I'm talking about actually being patient with him, teaching him how to sit down in the circle with the rest of the kids, raise his hand. He was doing so much of it, and it was with himself too. But they were so patient and so kind. So it's crazy when I'm hearing stories about your schooling at a young age and how you came up, how pivotal it was to your growth and your successes right now. And I can say the same thing with Shane. Shane is an AB, couple, like maybe 1 or 2 C's, but he's an AB student. Math is his favorite, which I suck at, but it's his favorite. And it's I really have to give credit, for his mother, to the teachers, to the staff at CHOP who helped with the diagnosis and everything. It's amazing, but the key compound is here, is that it must start early and it must start wholeheartedly. That's without any conviction. It just must be like, hey, we're going to hit the ground running for our child. We're going to make it happen. Any obstacles we come in, we're going to go ahead and go through those obstacles together as a family union, which is something that definitely I'm sure everybody here can actually agree with, and actually our audience too. It is definitely definitely
I'm
something.
sorry. I was gonna piggyback on Jamiel about your son, about preschool. I went to a preschool called Easter Seals, and they taught me similar things that that your son taught me when I was in like pre-K, when I was like going into pre-K, going into like 3 years old. That's
Okay.
pre-K. So there's a lot of stuff that they taught me like in many different ways, and yeah.
Cool. That's definitely cool. I mean, Easter Seals is a very good. I actually read up on and gave that information out on one of my shows for the Ausome Show for a lot of parents in Philadelphia
Absolutely.
for some alternatives. So definitely, Ben, like I said, it's just it's a blessing to have these people, these individuals, and these programs out there to actually help our awesome children.
Absolutely.
So our next question, Thomas, tell us more about Toastmasters. It looks serious. All right, it looks like you can't, no half stepping. You got to bring your A game. It's all about you and you. And how did your relationship come about with Toastmasters?
Well, I would call Toastmasters seriously fun, actually. And that's one of the mottos of one of the clubs that I belong to, seriously fun. And I started Toastmasters, or I first heard about it, I should say, when I was in the 6th grade. We had a gavel club where we would practice giving speeches in front of our peers and get some feedback on them. So I didn't hear from Toastmasters again until about 2014, when I was at the point in my life, I'm a CPA out here in California. I was working a desk job and really boring, felt like it was a dead end job, and I wanted to start telling my story. And my girlfriend introduced me to a local Toastmasters director, and we had a demo meeting, and I thought, wow, this is good stuff. And if I'm going to start telling my story, I need to sharpen the saw, if you will, and keep my skills up to date. And so we started a club in Santa Clarita. It's still going to this day, 5 years later. It's called The Outliers, like the book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers. We're all unique and extraordinary in our own ways. Well, my girlfriend and her friends, they were more like free spirits. They wanted to like be really impromptu, like winging it all the time. Whereas Toastmasters is very structured. They have an agenda, they have roles, everyone goes through doing their part. So while all the ladies left, I stayed behind, and I continue to be in several clubs to this day. And each Toastmasters meeting will feature prepared speeches, usually about 5 to 7 minutes, on a topic of the speaker's choice, and with certain guidelines like be mindful of your vocal variety, or use your body to speak, or see if you can use visual aids somewhere. That's some elements of prepared speeches. We also have table topics, also known as impromptu speaking, where the table topics master will pose a question and then ask someone from the audience to come up and give a 1 to 2 minute answer right off the cuff, no preparation really involved. And finally, we have evaluations of the prepared speeches, because Toastmasters is all about personal and professional growth. And when we have our peers evaluate us, make notes of what they saw and how that can maybe be addressed or improved in the future, that's what makes us better communicators, better leaders, and better public speakers. And the speech that you saw was part of the Toastmasters accredited speaker program, in which professional speakers master the art of public speaking and apply it to their particular trade or line of work. And there are only 87 Toastmasters accredited speakers in the world, and it is believed, they don't have an official record of it, but I could be the only person with autism to achieve this designation on the planet. And I did it because autism is a social communication disorder, and if I can master the art of public speaking, which is socializing and communicating, that opens up the conversation of what kind of things can you do? What are you holding back from yourself? Or how can you realize your full and true potential and break those barriers in your life?
We're not even talking just remotely about those on the spectrum.
Right.
What you just talked about was powerful for anybody to use any part in their life. Like that's my face here was just like, yo, he's the man. Like he's just the man. Like there's nothing else that I can say that other than he's the man. The effectiveness of public speaking, people don't know. One of my previous jobs, well back, was I used to work for Clear Channel Radio. I used to be what they call as account executive. Basically, I sold commercial time on the radio. So I basically had to get in front of people, make a PowerPoint, a presentation for their money, and show them exactly what they would get in return for the services, for the money, for the services. I learned the power of speaking to people from that point, because I had to do it. That was the way that I was able to earn a living, in a way that my customers were satisfied. The power of public speaking is deep. It's deeper than what people see on the outside. Your name and lights, you have a big picture of yourself, you're speaking in front of maybe tens of thousands of people. It actually feeds more of you as a person individually than what it does the people out there in the crowd. Ben, you're a public speaker. You go around schools and you speak to schools. So I mean, this is oh, man, greatness all the way around. I can't even believe it.
I think what we need to do is, when this is over, I think me and Tom should be we should do like a actual panel kind of thing.
I think, listen, I think
Totally.
y'all should probably be speaking together. If y'all could get something, work something out where you could be a guest speaker, Tom is there, headline. If y'all need a hype man, I'm definitely available. I will make that trip to California really quick. I got a suit too, ready to go. But definitely just to see you guys, you two, with the same abilities to go up on stage and talk to people. Social interaction, what our children actually they suffer from. A lot of them do, some of them don't. but they can grow and they can progress and they can do so much more with it. And you guys are a product of that. So that's something definitely I'm blessed to actually be able to be in the circle of this, because that gives me hope for my son. And as a parent, a lot of us are very, very scared, very overprotective about our son and their interactions with other individuals and even other parents too. So thank you for that. Just getting along to the next question. I remember in one of your clips, you described the isolation of autism by going into detail, speaking a little bit about a child's norm, quote unquote, in this day and age. What is the quote unquote norm of someone on the spectrum in your perspective?
Mm-hmm. And really quick, from the last question about Toastmasters, that we fear public speaking more than we fear death. So if you can master the art of public speaking, or manage, or even conquer your fear of speaking in front of others, you can manage just about anything in your life.
Wow.
And all the Toastmasters meetings around the world, or most of them, are now meeting virtually because of COVID-19. And that brings me into the next point. COVID-19 has really brought about what it's like for people with autism to live on a daily basis. So being at home by yourself, not going out as much as you would like, or avoiding crowds, or not sure when this is all going to end, the unpredictability and the anxiety resulting from all of those circumstances. I think this time we're living in right now is ultimately an opportunity for a lesson in empathy. This is how it feels to have autism. When you're staying at home, not doing much, not sure what's going to happen or what's going to come next, this is how it feels. And I really encourage all people with autism to share their stories, share how they've coped, how they've survived, for lack of a better term, before COVID-19 even hit. And I also, I spoke at a group based in San Francisco last Saturday. I told them to think about their hobbies, or something they do really well that's entertaining or educating. Maybe they're good at cooking or baking, or maybe they play music or sing really well, or maybe they do really nice paintings and drawings. Start streaming that out for the world to see, so people can make comments, can send things to you, or follow your progress along, so they can say things like, wow, Ben, you sound a whole lot better now than you did 2 months ago.
Wow.
So that growth continues to happen, because I think it's when we have no choice but to grow or to be strong that we start to be strong and grow.
Those words right there. And it's funny too, Tom, me and Ben were actually smiling because I'm not sure if you had a chance to check out some of our early episodes, but we actually had Max and Matthew, guests on our show, and they are actually putting together a project.
That's what I was just about to say.
Specifically speaking about the effects of COVID-19 on someone's ability to see the normal perspective of life from those that are on the spectrum. It's amazing that you just brought that up, and you know, you heard it here first at the Ben and Jay show with Max and Matthew. We're bringing them more information, more intel, but they're coming up with a project. We're actually trying to do something bigger. We could talk to you about that later on, because this is really a wake-up call for a lot of people. A lot of people are now understanding what it is when, you know, they have a child. Give an example, my son. I'm calling him. He's in his room. He's in his atmosphere, his surrounding. He's comfortable with this. But he's comfortable with this is because his unknown about everything else that's going on around him.
Absolutely.
We're bringing him out of that. We're getting them out of that, getting them outside, you know, doing a couple of things and different things. But there's so many people that are on the spectrum that unfortunately are not going to break out of this or have it yet. So
yeah, I agree.
It's amazing, right, Ben? It's amazing.
I totally agree, because one, if a lot of people they have a routine, and the routine is they want to do stuff that they like to do more often. And if they break that routine, they get upset.
Right. And sometimes society will cause that routine or that schedule to break down, and people with autism love schedules. That's what I mentioned last Saturday. So I've started to form my own new routines and a new schedule. Like every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at given times, I'll do a Facebook Live conversation. Every Tuesday, I order takeout from a local restaurant and take a picture and advertise small businesses on my social media. I also see my parents every Sunday for dinner. I did that before COVID-19, but incorporating new routines, new habits, or ways that you can continue to grow and develop yourself so you can keep moving through all this. That is something that's definitely helped me through all this.
Great. That's amazing. And that's something that all of us can actually take heed to and actually put into our schedule. Hey, Ben, you could go ahead. You got question number 6, buddy.
All right.
Yeah, I just have some great ideas for some different stuff, but I wanted to focus on here and now. So, tell us about your book, Come to Life. What was your inspiration to write this book? What are the names of the other books have you written? I'd like to buy one of your books someday.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and you can buy my book Come to Life through my website, thomasiland.com. It's the best way to order it. And this book is written, I got the idea for it, and my mother assisted me with it about 4.5 years ago when I decided to leave accounting and start telling my story. So she and I started to put our heads together and write about our secrets to success, and what I think, what I feel, what is my message or my messages to my peers, and my mother chiming in here and there with a parent and a professional's perspective. And this is actually the first volume. This is me talking to my peers. The second volume coming soon will be my mother mainly talking to parents, professionals, educators about navigating the school systems and preparing for transition for adulthood. So, and we named this book Come to Life because too many people with autism are sitting back waiting for life to come to them. And I tell them, it's up to you to come to life.
Wow.
You have to be the one to get up, go outside, increase your mental strength, master your emotions, and dedicate yourself to something bigger and greater than yourself to make a difference in the world. So that's the basis for this book. And this is the only book that I've written. My mother has written several other books. We'll talk more about that in another question. But I do have a book or an idea I do want to write in the near future. I'm going to call it From Accountant to Advocate.
Wow.
From accountant to advocate. It'll focus on my professional experiences and my story of jobs that worked and didn't work, and how people with autism can find permanent, gainful employment.
All right, so I'm glad you brought that up. First off, shout out to your mom, Emily, doing her thing. We're gonna heighten that with the next question. But you are an accountant. You know how many numbers that is? Like I can barely remember the combination of like different things to go on to apps to go from my banking and everything. I gotta put on autosave all the time because I'm getting to the age where I'm like, yo, these numbers is getting out of control. How was that? As someone being on the spectrum, an accountant, like how did that come about? How was that?
Okay, so basically when I was about in 9th grade, freshman year in high school, I knew that I was good with numbers, and I knew that I loved Star Wars. So I made it my goal in life to be George Lucas's accountant. And because I figured an accountant or other financial professional was in demand and that I could make some money from that job. So I pursued that career, got my bachelor's in accounting, and took the CPA exam. It's even more difficult than the bar. It took me many attempts to pass the 4 sections, but I did it. And I worked for Disney doing property taxes straight out of college. And Disney actually acquired Lucasfilm after I left the company. So the way I see it, retroactively and indirectly, I was George Lucas's accountant. So I had several jobs in the private sector. I worked a summer internship at a Big 4 public accounting firm. And the numbers, I could work with the numbers, but a lot of the judgment and changing laws and certain relationships with my colleagues or some clients, sometimes that made it more difficult. So it's not always hard skills, like all about numbers. There's also soft skills, like how to talk to people, how to communicate bad news, how to adapt to changing work conditions. So that's where I found it more and more difficult, and what made me more and more unhappy, to the point where I said, F this, I'm going to tell my story and help people on a personal level.
Can I piggyback on what Tom said real quick? I was going to say accounting degree. That's pretty crazy. You know, my dad is very good at math because we talked about math earlier. He went to college to do accounting, and now he works for a computer company.
Uh-huh.
And he's just an amazing dad because one, he really knows what he's doing, and he's just an amazing father for what he does today.
It's not for everybody, and I
No,
did my mother's bookkeeping for her business up until a few months
crazy.
ago. Now it's very easy. You can do it online. It's very user friendly, and I'll answer her questions here and there. But at the end of this year, I'm going to go inactive in accounting. I'm not going to renew my license or my continuing education. I'm going to dedicate myself fully to this new life for myself, letting go of the old to embrace the new.
Oh, wow. That's accounting. I'm still on the whole accounting thing. I couldn't even imagine. But your statement there is just is powerful. Once again, everything that you're doing in your life has a statement that's powerful that can be for those on the spectrum and those off the spectrum. There's lessons in everything. Especially in everything that we're going through right now, people need to realize that there is a lesson. Everybody has an individual perspective of that lesson, but there is a lesson for everybody with everything that's going on. So that's definitely good. Now let's get into that question because it relates to your mom, Emily. And you know, you wrote that book, Come to Life. It was you and your mother. And you currently work with your mother and law enforcement agencies around the country to help educate those officers with understanding, identifying, and the handling of those on the spectrum when in an emergency situation. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Because I want to start something in Philadelphia. Shout out to all my Philadelphia police officer friends, firefighters. Love you guys.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Shout out real quick, Jamiel. Shout out to my friends at Upper Gwinnett, Montgomery Township. Love you guys too. You guys are amazing. Thank you for what you do for your service, and we love you guys.
Definitely, definitely. Tom, can you tell us a little bit more about this? Because I'm very intrigued, and I know the audience, especially with everything that's going around with law enforcement, there's always two sides of the story. So with this type of training and understanding, I think it will help depict both sides of those stories, especially with interactions on those on the spectrum.
Absolutely. So here's the scoop. I started driving. I got my license and was out driving and had my share of interactions with law enforcement, be it I got pulled over for a speeding ticket or I didn't yield to a cop's hand signals and he proceeded to give me a lot of lip for that, or saying or doing something that was suspicious, or as what happened to me one time, I got pulled over and thought to myself, oh, that officer's going to want to see my ID. And I proceeded to reach into my pocket for my ID. Yeah. And the officer saw this and said, sir, can you please keep your hands on the steering wheel where I could see them? Now, think about if I hadn't done what he said, or I didn't respond to his command, or if he had been a little trigger happy that day, I could have been shot. And I may not be talking to you right now.
Wow.
So people with autism are saying and doing things that get them in trouble. And my mother, who was the president of the Autism Society of Los Angeles at the time, started to train police officers as a volunteer by herself. Didn't really have much of a lesson plan in mind. And LAPD was also seeking more training and asked if she could help them. And she said, absolutely. So she's trained the police about autism. And one day an officer says to her, Emily, I could know someone has autism, but if they run from me, I still have to chase them. And if they fight with me, I have to fight back and win. It's my protocol. So who is teaching the young people to not run and not fight? And the answer was nobody. So my mother, who now has a master's degree in special education and is an adjunct professor in special education, in addition to train the police, she created an entire movie and curriculum to teach young people with and without autism how to interact safely with the police. It's called Be Safe, the movie. Be Safe, the movie. And this is essential. It's 7 episodes, 1 hour total, each covering a vital concept or lesson that's not really taught in the classrooms, but through life experience. And she has experience from her clients and all the families she's advocated for over the years. But she also incorporated reading comprehension, because Ben, you were talking about difficulty with reading.
Mm-hmm.
Reading comprehension is very, very complex for people
yeah.
with autism. And she wrote an entire book, if you want to write this down, or if your viewers want to write this down, Drawing a Blank.
Ooh.
Drawing a Blank is a book that she wrote discussing improving reading comprehension for readers on the autism spectrum.
Wow.
Okay.
Because Be Safe uses visuals. It has a lot of good, colorful pictures. It gives the information that needs to be known or will be discussed up front, and then summarizes it at the end. Here are the main takeaways. Here's what you need to know to be safe. So this way, people with autism will stay where they are instead of not running. They will follow instructions instead of resist. They will keep their hands where they can be seen at all times instead of reaching out or reaching in. And also disclosing their diagnosis. People tend to think, or if something goes wrong in the news, people are quick to say, well, weren't the police trained? Train the police. But my mother and I ask, what did the child not know? Or what did the child do that got them in trouble?
Absolutely.
And we address that, while also, because both parties, police and people with autism, need to be educated about one another to bridge that gap and understand one another better. And that is what my mother and I do and continue to do. Even with COVID-19, we're doing webinars now instead of the in-person workshops and community events. But the conversation must continue that both people with autism and police need to understand one another, be educated, have opportunities to meet and understand what's expected from both parties.
I have an idea. I think we should, when we do our panel thing, Jamiel, we should really bring more people into this conversation about police force and how we can interact with people with autism on the police.
Definitely, that will definitely be one of our questions, our topics, which we'll have our panel discuss. And once again, with the panel, you'll be able, as the audience, like we do here on the show, you'll be able to ask your questions and voice your opinions on the topic. So Ben, definitely this will be something, because this is something that I'm passionate about. And the reason why it goes into a comment that I wanted to say is that I'm on both sides. So I am a person who has a child that's on the spectrum, that wants the best for him, wants him to cooperate with law enforcement when needed, but also needs him to be strong in certain areas. I also used to be a corrections officer, so I do have law enforcement under my belt. And I understand the difficulties, the stresses, and some of the characteristics that we look for when approaching a person, whether it be a person of interest or just approaching someone just to find out some information. There is a lag on both parts. It's not saying that is primary to police. We're not saying it's the child's fault, but there is a lag, a disconnection on what needs to take place there. And hopefully with Thomas, his mom, Emily, hope my efforts, I'm only one person, and someone that may be listening who may be trying to get efforts wherever you may be, together by the culmination of these efforts, we can get law enforcement, also emergency services, those individuals, really some good training from a parent, from a professional aspect, to let them know what they need to look for when approaching our wonderful children. Because I mean, it is scary that, it could be, my child, Ben, hope, God forbid that it could be you or Tom, back in the past, it could have been you, by simply you reaching in because you were anxious and you wanted to be cooperative. And it was a structure for you to say, okay, I'm getting pulled over. I must have my ID. I must have my insurance card ready for the officer. The officer takes it, hey, I don't know what this guy is reaching for. And he goes to the force continuum, which they taught us in Corrections Officer Academy, is the number one threat, which is violent force, unfortunately, and it does happen. So Thomas, and your mom, Emily, definitely, we applaud you guys for what you're doing in the community. I will definitely, like I said, and we spoke before, definitely myself and also Ben would love to work with you guys to try to get this all across the country as much as we possibly can. So, use us as an asset. We are here for you when it comes down to that. That is definitely.
I even talked to one of my friends. She's a judge for Montgomery Township in Philadelphia. So her name is Judge Duffy. And I was telling her you today about what you do and stuff, and she was like, "Wow, that's pretty amazing." And her husband is the chief of Upper Gwinnett.
There you go.
He's the chief of like the police township in our county.
Okay.
So we were just talking, saying what we should see if we can get some of this people to maybe one night you could present them or something and just say, hey, this is what I do in different ways.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to get that done. We're definitely going to get that done. But it starts with just the idea, and then it starts with passion, and then you just continue on. That's the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Staying with it. So Tom, I was doing my research and on you and your amazing story, and I came across something I had to address, and I found this very funny because I talked to my wife about it, and we laughed about it because this is really really how dating is today in society. And Ben, hey, you should listen to this. So
I remember this. I think it was the tennis.
there you go. The tennis game. When it comes to dating,
like Pog.
the premise behind this is crazy because as a man, you serve the ball, which is first contact. You reaching out, you get a phone number, you reach out to your opponent. That would be the girl you're interested in. And like a tennis game, the man, you must wait back to receive or hear back from her. What has this technique taught you about dealing with individuals on different types of relationships, whether they be romantic, they be business relationships, personal relationships, friends and family? What has it taught you on that type of level? Also, interpersonal skills.
Society has a tendency to what's called criminalize disability. They see someone going out there minding their own business, but it looks suspicious. So people are quick to involve the authorities, or the moment someone feels scared or threatened, they're going to call the police instead of attempt to reason with the person or teach them what they need to know. So when I was young, right around the time I got diagnosed, I liked a girl and I wanted to go out with her and let her know how I felt. So I gave her a call, left her a voicemail, and waited for her to get back to me. And it didn't happen after maybe a couple hours or a day or two. So I called her again, made sure she got the message, left another message for her, and waited for an answer. Still didn't get one. And I have a bit of a Batman mentality. I'm very persistent. I think if I do it often enough, maybe she'll change her mind or say something. So I call her again, leave her another message, and still no answer. Well, this girl goes to my sister at school and tells my sister, if your brother doesn't stop calling me, I'm going to the police.
Oh, wow.
And she did not go to the police, but my sister did go to my mother, and my mother had to sit me down and give me a little lesson in context, or give me an analogy. I think this is where people with autism can learn from their mistakes, or once they have some context or something to relate to they have done or that they can do, that it will click. So what my mother did, she explained to me that a friendship, a relationship, or even a conversation is like a tennis game. I have to serve you. I serve you the ball. That's me initiating, and then the other person has to hit that ball back to me. So it's like a two-way street, because I was serving and serving and serving and serving, ball after ball after ball after ball, and nothing was coming back to me.
Oh, man.
So the rule my family and I set is that I get 2 serves, 2 calls to someone, and if they don't hit the ball back, I have to find someone else to play with.
There you go.
Stop calling that person. Go find someone else.
Listen, for those who are not on the spectrum, that is what we call doing too much. If you go past 2 serves, you are doing too much. So, once again, has given you the key to life, fellas. If you're not on the spectrum, that tidbit was for you also. 2 serves, rest.
And I demonstrated that during my Toastmasters accreditor speech, and I mentioned that some men, autism or not, sometimes we don't always get the clue. Ladies, am I right?
Exactly.
And everyone's all applauding.
Can I just say one more funny thing? Didn't you wear a Batman costume on one of those things?
Yes, I demonstrated how when I first got diagnosed that I felt like Batman in the sense that I could stay hidden behind a mask. I could hide.
Do we have that?
Yeah, I think it just went out there. So, and Batman is a hero of mine because he is the kind of guy that will face his fears. He will use his mind to outsmart his enemies. He will see that he has to be the one to make the difference, and even if it's through darkness. So I symbolize by removing my cape, letting my guard down, and removing my mask, showing my true self instead of hiding behind a mask. That's how I make a bigger difference and a bigger impact.
Wow, that's dope. That's definitely dope. I like that. I like that a lot. The Dark Knight, definitely like that.
Yep, Dark Knight.
Ben, you got the next question, number 9.
I do. And then you go, and then I go, and then we can open up the floor after we're done these 2 questions, and then we'll do our winner. What would be a message you would like the world to receive and understand about autism?
Okay, so my overall message, and this about summarizes everything that we've talked about to this point, I want people to know that people with autism are part of the human race, just like the rest of us. They have feelings, they have something to offer. Yes, there may be some holes in their knowledge, kind of like Swiss cheese. There's some holes in their knowledge, like those social cues and those body language elements. So before you call the police on them if they scare you, before you choose not to hire them because they're not looking at you, before you choose to cast them out, think to yourself, what does this person not know that I might be able to teach them? And I read this blog this morning from the Art of Autism. I'm on their board here in California. Her name is Juliet Dunn. She explained that as a society, we need to adapt a shift in our attitude rather than an attempt to change the person. So we shift our attitude, our mindset, our outlook of the situation rather than looking to change somebody, because it's not going to work out if you attempt to change someone or you're not accepting them for who they are. And again, as a society, you may have heard the term melting pot, like we all kind of blend together, or we start to adapt other people's qualities. Well, I took an interpersonal communication course, and my teacher explained that we are not a melting pot society. We are a tossed salad. You have a bunch of ingredients in there all mixed together, and a cucumber doesn't become a tomato in that process, for example. Everyone has their own unique qualities in the entire mix without being changed, and it all tastes good together.
Actually, that brings me up to a funny story. When I first started working at Olive Garden, they hired me to make salads. So I would put all the ingredients in and make the salad and then serve it out to the guests. So it's just a really fun job to make salads.
There you go.
So again, people with autism are here to stay. And I know there was a time where people thought autism needs to be cured. It's a disease. But now we're starting to be more accepting of other people's differences.
Absolutely.
And that's what's going to make the world a better place, when we include, accept, and value people with autism for who they are and what they offer.
Exactly.
Great message. This is the time in the show. We've been having a great forum, but this is the time in the show that we turn everybody mics on and allow our audience to ask questions to Tom, myself, Ben, whatever questions or comments that you may have. We just ask that you be respectful and also allow one person to speak at a time. You just start off by saying your first name, and then you can pose your question. And if you have anything in the background playing, we just ask that you turn it down so we can make sure we hear you clearly. So everybody is off of mute, and the first person, go ahead and ask.
Hi, I'm Melissa.
Hey,
Melissa.
what's up?
I'm good. I actually wanted to piggyback on Thomas's thing about the police. There's actually, I don't know if they do it or not anymore, but there's like a study at CHOP where they do a police study, and I've actually been in there.
Oh wow!
Huh?
Really?
Yeah, it was like the first couple. Go ahead.
Research study. Yeah, it's kind of like we learned that from Julia Parrish Morris. Like we talk about, like it's like a what's it called?
Virtual reality.
Virtual reality, yeah. And then I remember you talked about Tom a couple weeks ago. There's a driving school up in New York.
Yes. So to give your viewers the story, so Be Safe is a video modeling curriculum. We use movies to show people what to do and how to behave in a given situation. Well, the National Institute of Health did a study comparing Be Safe and video modeling to virtual reality instructions and studies. And they're showing that video modeling is in some ways more effective than virtual reality. But my mother and I found out about this at an Autism Society of America convention 3 years ago. And we had no idea that was even happening or that the study was ongoing. And Ben brought Albany, it was Albany, New York. They've incorporated police into their driver's ed and driving classes, in which people get the lessons and then everyone gets into their cars, police included, and then the students practice getting pulled over by an actual police in his or her squad car.
Oh, wow.
So you actually get to experience what it's like to have the police come behind you, lights on, what questions they ask, what they want from you.
Yeah.
So there's that connection, and everyone is educated and informed in the process.
That's dope. That's dope. Alyssa, thank you for that information. Did you have any more questions or?
Yeah, I also wanted to add that there was not only virtual reality in the study, but at like the near end, they also had like a real police officer come in the room while I was waiting. Yeah, it was really cool. And they asked me like a couple questions, like, and they had like a bag on the floor. Like they were like, "Have you seen this bag before?" And I'm like, "Actually, no, I haven't seen it." So yeah, it was really interesting, and I hope they're still doing it because, people need to know more about what to do with the police and everything. So like they should know not to run or fight or anything like that. Like if you need that kind of information, you can also watch Cops too. So
just remember on that show, all suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Thanks, Alyssa. We appreciate you always listening in and giving us some feedback on our guests. We appreciate you. Anybody else?
You're welcome.
No problem. Anybody else has a question for Thomas, myself, or Ben? Well, without that, Ben, it's raffle time, bro.
Yes, sir. I wonder who the winner is.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and raffle. Ben, you got it.
The winner is, and I haven't seen the winner yet. Jackie. Jackie won.
Yes.
Is Jackie?
Yes.
All right, Jackie.
Hey, Jackie, congratulations. You won.
Oh, thank you.
You got
You won
a
a Tony
pizza.
Ernie's free 16-inch pizza or tomato pie.
Oh, man.
Ah.
Jackie, thank you for tuning in. And, Ben and Jay show where everybody is a winner. You just got yourself a free pizza. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jackie.
Thank you.
No problem. Well, Tom, it has been an amazing show. I don't think this show does any justice for what you do, what you've overcome. Everybody, don't forget about the book. Go out and get the book. You got time, you got the book, you can show them.
Come to life.
Come to life. Go ahead and support that book. It's a lot of things that
my website's going in the chat here as we speak. There it is. You can buy the book there. Oh
yeah, you can get the book there. It's a lot about life that I think people on and off the spectrum can actually learn. It's from an inspirational point, so it's all heartfelt and it's nothing but love when it's actually written off of those pages. So go out and support that book. We just want to say thank you for your time. You are family of the Ben and Jay Show. We look forward to doing something with you. Once again, you and your mom, Emily. Tell Emily same thing. Our congratulations on everything. And she's a part of the family as well.
Absolutely.
No problem. We want to say congratulations to our winners. And if you would like to support what we do here at the Ben and Jay Show, please consider donating to Access Services at www.accessservices.org.donate. And you can follow us on social media for encouraging updates throughout the week. You can see Ben's face, you can see my face, and you can see guest face like Tom. So there you go.
Sir.
We got 3 beautiful faces to see every single week. But once again, Tom, thanks again. Ben,
I got this. First of all, I would like to, this show can make possible by Access Services. I would like to thank Access Services for doing this. I would like to thank our sponsor, our sponsor of the main host show, Tony Roney's Pizza. And Tony Roney's, we love you, Tony Roney's. I would like to tell everybody, let's be kind to each other this week, and let's have fun this week as well. I also like to thank our veterans and our people who serve our country. Thank you guys for your support, and we love you guys.
Hey guys, this is me. You know I gotta try to leave you guys with something, and it's just as simple as what I got on my hat. God is dope. Regardless of anything that's going on right now, God is dope. He's doing some great things in your life and my life, so don't give up hope. We are experiencing something that's supposed to change us for the good. So take this COVID-19 and use it for a good, a positive motivation in your life. All right? Tom done it, and this was before COVID-19, and he's still doing it. Ben's doing it. I'm doing it. Come join us, all right? So this is Jay for Ben and Jay.
Ben.
Tom.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.